welcome to How to Run Profitable Retreats podcast, the podcast that guides you not to only host retreats that thrive financially, but also transform people's lives. I'm your host, Lainey Cavazos, and each week I bring you the best strategies and personal insights to help you create retreat experiences that transform lives, both your clients and your own. In our journey together, we'll dive into the secrets behind successful retreats, from crafting a unique atmosphere to mastering the logistics that ensure profitability. Whether you're tuning in for inspiring interviews with leading retreat experts or seeking actionable advice in our solo episodes, this podcast is your go-to resource for turning your retreat visions into reality. Don't miss out on any of our episodes and subscribe now. For more tools and a free guide on creating your own six-figure retreat business, visit theretreatplanner.com. Now let's get started and make your retreat dreams come true. Welcome everyone to another episode of How to Run Profitable Retreats. And today I'm so thrilled to have Frank Ciccia. He's an MBA, MS, and an authentic, transparent, and empathetic leader, change agent, known for his ability to align leaders for maximum impact on people and organizations. He has the deep experience and academic knowledge valued by organizations, stemming from over 16 years as a clinical adjunct professor in the University of Buffalo, executive and professional MBA, as well as his prior role as a founding director of the Leadership Development Center and guiding cultural transformations at over 135 for-profit and non-for-profit organizations. So I'm going to summarize this for you. We're going to be talking today about retreats, but for corporations, for profits, and for nonprofit corporations, and how that will actually create high impact teams. Yeah. So if you're interested in how to build a space where you can actually dive into the space of working for corporations, bringing your message in that space, you do not want to miss this talk. And if you're someone who has a team that needs these, you do not want to miss this talk as well, right? So Frank, thank you so much for being here today at this podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lenny, for inviting me. I appreciate the time today.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what do you do and how do you serve people? Because I know what you do, but everyone in our audience doesn't. So let's just hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'll try to. I've had a very long career, so I'll try to summarize it as quickly as I possibly can. I've worked in a variety of settings over the past several decades. I have had roles where I worked in academia. I have worked in non-for-profit settings. I've worked in corporate leadership settings. I have had senior leadership roles. I have always, though, no matter what role I have had, to my core, every single thing I've done has been to support the growth and development of individuals and teams. That's who I am. You can take my title away. I don't really care about titles. What I do and what I know how to do and what I'm good at doing is supporting the growth of individuals and teams. And for the past 14 years, I have been working with my own company called Illuminare Group. It's actually Illuminare Group. I'm a dual U.S. Italian citizen. And the word Illuminare means, and I always tell people I'm not part of a secret Vatican society. That's not why I chose the name. I chose the name Illuminare because the word means in Italian to shed light. And for me, it represents the aha word, the awareness word, the point of awareness. When people now become more illuminated, they become much more aware, they become much more knowledgeable. And that's really the goal of what we do, is we support the growth and development of leaders within organization so that they can lead much more deliberately, with purpose, and that they're creating a positive impact in the lives of others who choose them every single day as their leaders. And that's what we do. Over the past 14 years, I've worked with well over 145 organizations. And a lot of the work that we do, in addition to our programs, our services, our coaching, is focused on retreats.
I love this. Well, I don't want to say I'm the queen of retreats, but I love retreats. I love them. So maybe I should just give myself the title, right? So make a like a coronation ceremony for myself. But yeah, I love retreats because they're deeply, deeply transformational. So I
Mhm.
am so thrilled to have you here because imagine like anyone who's listening, you're listening to someone who has worked with over 145 companies and has built so many retreats for them. And then not just that, the containers that continue to grow and create more transformation for them. But Frank, I have a question for you. It's like, okay, so after 145 companies, would there be like, and I'm going to say three because one is too hard, but would there be
Yeah.
three common threads that all the companies have to work on?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That's an easy question. Number one is that I think that, one of the concepts I talk about is moving leaders from firefighting mode to growth mode. They spend an awful lot of time working on the day-to-day, putting out fires, working on urgent, important things, tasks, tasks, tasks. And what I've learned about the importance of retreats is retreats are an opportunity to get out of the action, to focus on how you can move out of this firefighting mode into more growth mode. And that involves focus on what I call maintenance mode. And maintenance mode is all around where we create norms, practices, systems that allow us to move out of firefighting. And we do that by focusing on alignment. How can we be better aligned? One of the things I would say is really important when it comes to corporations is that you can have the best strategy on paper. It can look great, it can sound great. You can say, "Oh my God, if we achieve this, we will be amazing long-term sustainable financial growth." However, I have found that one of the reasons why organizations fail to achieve their strategy is because leaders are too busy working in their lanes and they are not working in collectively towards these common wins, towards these common goals. They first, number one, need to see themselves as partners. And a retreat allows us to take a time away from the action to sit down and focus on the fact that, wait a minute, we are partners in this business. We are not functional leaders anymore. We are enterprise-wide leaders. Second thing I learned is that retreats are great as a way of being able to do some work to focus on team alignment. But the retreat alone is not the be-all end-all. There needs to be follow-up. I can't tell you how many times I have left a retreat that I participated in, and I've gone back to work and I go back into firefighting mode, back into the work, and everything we talked about at the retreat, we forget about because
Mm.
nobody's holding us accountable to it. One of the things I do when I work with my organizations is that the retreat is a starting point. It is not the be all end all. We do follow up. We meet either monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly to revisit all of the things that we said we were going to do at this retreat, to talk about our progress, how we are doing, and how well are we working as a team to accomplish those things. The other thing I have learned is that it is very, very important that whenever we are doing work within organizations, we start at the very top of the organization and then we work our way down to other leaders throughout the organization.
Mm.
And lady, you may say, but Frank, why is that? Why do you start at the very top of the organization? I'll tell you why. One of the things I learned early on was when I was being hired to work with supervisors, frontline leaders. Please, can you give them some supervisory training? They need some skills, they need some development. And early on, being new to this years ago, I would say, sure, be happy to do that. And what I found is as soon as I brought these new merging leaders, frontline leaders, supervisors in the room, the most the most standard question I was asked, most frequent question I was asked is, Frank, this is all great stuff. We love this material. However, is my boss going to get this? Because my boss could really use this.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They can use this. And so that's why now I always say we start at the very top. We make sure that we have consistent language. We have consistent alignment. We call our leadership programs collective win leadership programs because it really is about creating a win-win outcome for all those that are involved. If we're working collectively together towards common goals, towards common wins, we will all win. We will all win.
I
I
love
don't
this.
know if that was three things
Yeah,
or
it
more
was.
things or yeah.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely perfect. I think it gives me so much to think about. I'm just like, but really the first piece is very important, right? So moving from like reactive to proactive, right? So really
Yes.
moving from this space where you're like turning down fires into the space where you can actually think, plan, and execute
Yes.
for the growth, right? So I think this is
Yeah.
very important. So for anyone who's listening to this, if you're thinking about like, oh, well, maybe, I might want to think about like going into like the corporate space and working with people in the corporate world, I would ask yourself this question. Do I understand like how does the corporate world works? Because it doesn't work the same way as a small business owner. It doesn't work the same way. There's so many moving pieces, so many different mindsets. And also there's usually a lot of competition inside of it. Right. So I think this is why it's so great that you're bringing this place where everyone is winning, everyone is
Mhm.
working together towards one goal. So, and that's why I've been to many corporate retreats. I organize many corporate retreats. And I have to say, when I attended so many times, like, all these team bonding exercises were like, oh my gosh, like, do I need to really play tag with this person that I don't really like? And it used to be like, these activities that were like, icebreakers, like not something not very fun. And I'm the person who's like, game on, right? But I'm not,
Yeah.
like, for example, compared to other of my colleagues, I'm not highly competitive in that space. Like, I don't care if I win or not. I want to be there for the experience. But there's people who are very highly competitive. So if they would lose, oh my gosh, it was crazy. So you want to be thinking about it in the space of like, how do I create a mindset and a space for once I like, let's go wider into supervisory levels, management levels, the bosses are setting the pace,
Mhm.
right? They are
Yeah.
cohesive. So then you're leading by example, right?
Yeah. Exactly. You're translating what you're learning to others. You're taking that knowledge and you're sharing it so that we're all speaking the same language. We have similar terms, we have similar practices, we have similar norms, we have similar values, we have similar ways in which we go about doing things. The way I refer to it is this. Look, I want everybody to come to the organization to be unique, to be their own self, to show up as their authentic self. However, when we work in systems, which when we work in organizations, workplaces, we're a part of a system. And the analogy I use all the time about why it's important to develop common norms, practices, ways in which we go about leading is if we don't have consistency that provides stability, we will never be able to grow.
Mm.
When we're always in a state of instability, which could be inconsistent practices, inconsistent norms, inconsistent ways in which we go about doing things, it can create confusion within the system, within the organization. The analogy I use is shoes on, shoes off. In certain cultures or in certain households, right? If I come to your home as a guest in your home, do I take my shoes off as a guest in your home or do I leave them on?
Mm.
And what do I do when I come to your home? Do I take them off or do I leave them on?
You keep them.
Okay, leave them on. But guess what? It's your home, so I do that. But Lenny, if you have a partner in your home and I come to your home and you say, Frank, leave your shoes on, but your significant other partner says, oh no, you take them off. Now I'm confused. Now, do I leave one on? Do I take one off? Like, what do I do? I have no idea.
Right.
What maintenance, that mode, what it does is it creates stability. It creates consistency.
Mm.
It doesn't matter whether it's shoes on or shoes off. The important thing is be consistent
Mm.
so that we don't create confusion. I start with the senior leaders because if I'm working with people at the front line, if I'm working with supervisors, leads, they're going and saying, "Yeah, but Frank, this is all great." But then when I go to try to bring this up to other leaders, they don't have the same understanding. So now, what do I do? It's inconsistent. And what it does in the long run is it creates confusion for your employees. And when they're confused about how to go about doing things, they're not going to be as most productive as they can be.
I love it. And now that you brought productivity, I'm a huge fan of productivity. I've
Hmm.
taken so many trainings. I teach people how to be more productive in their lifetimes. On Sunday, I was meeting one of my cousins and I was telling him, it's like, oh my gosh, my company really needs that. And he is the boss of the company, right? I'm like, yeah, your company needs to be more productive because but he needs the work first because he's the first workaholic that arrives at the office at 7:30 in the morning and leaves at 7 p.m.
Hmm.
at night or longer. And now he's like, you know what? When I'm doing emails at like 5 in the afternoon, I can tell that I'm not being very, very productive. Right. So,
Yes.
like, yeah, like, yes, your team needs this because, like, of the high turnover and, the way like the company feels. But first, you need to like do that for yourself and for your senior team. And then from there, we can then put it down into the space of actually everyone else.
Hmm.
And I think it like makes a lot of sense. And then there is of
Yeah.
course space for continuity. But I got these other questions. So, like when people hire you to come and host, like coach, like host retreats for corporations, and then the whole setup afterwards, like I call it the integration process, right? So it lets you actually allows you to integrate
Yeah.
your learnings into your life, right? So like you
Yes.
say, so the retreat, and then there's the retreat has a transformation aspect, and then there's the integration process, and definitely in companies you need to have like a longer integration process for sure. But I would ask, like, what are the main problems that companies are facing? Like, for example, are their employees not very productive? Is there like a lot of like employee turnover? Is it like maybe like there's pieces of the puzzle, like of the engine of the company that are not working
Yeah.
together? What are the things you see the most that people need solving?
The biggest is I see is there's a lack of systems and process, that and a lack of maintenance. They're spending too much time in firefighting. When we actually do an exercise at our retreat where we talk about how much time they're spending in firefighting mode, which I explained to them, how much they're spending in maintenance mode, which is again process systems, norms, consistency, stability, and how much they're spending in growth mode every single time I have done a retreat. And again, I do about 50 to 20 corporate retreats a year. And I've been doing them for years. And I will say every single time they are spending too much time in firefighting mode and not enough time in growth mode. They're skipping maintenance mode. So
Mm,
what they end up doing is they're trying to move from firefighting to growth, and it just looks desperate. It's a lot of change that is sporadic. Their employees are experiencing change fatigue. They're not, time is their greatest constraint, and they're not spending their time productively. They're
mm,
spending their time and doing a lot of time wasters. I have leaders who spend none of their time. Here's an example. I have leaders who have some problems with their employees. They're not able to coach them. They're not able to advise them. They're not able to find out how they're spending their time because these leaders are spending all day long in meetings. They're
mm.
going from one meeting to the next to the next. Here's how it turns quickly into a fire. So, Lenny, if you're spending all time in meetings all day long and you've got a team of 7 people who need you for coaching, for guidance, but you're in meetings all day, what do you think they're doing? They are going to get coaching, but it's not going to be from you. Eventually, that turns into a fire. I can't tell you how many times employees have said, I've called my spouse or significant other. I've called another employee. I'm being trained by somebody who has taught me a whole bunch of shortcuts. And so now all of a sudden, that's one example of
Mm.
how we say, and now because my employees have been trained poorly, they're not getting good advice. Eventually, this is going to become another fire for me.
Right. And I
right?
would say,
And
yeah.
getting them out of that is difficult because they're like, but I feel like I've got to be you've got to really look at how you're spending your time and make sure that you are very protective of that you're
Mm,
focusing on the most important and urgent things. One of the things I teach leaders when we are at these retreats is a team alignment exercise. And one of the things that we do in this exercise is I teach them using a stoplight system on how they can triage their priorities
mm.
because they've got to triage them. They've got to focus on those things that are most urgent, most important. They've got to make sure that they put process in how they are allocating their time on a regular basis. If not, then other people's issues are going to become their issues.
I really like that. Like for me, I am a big fan of SOPs. For anyone who's listening and doesn't know what an SOP is, it's standard operating procedure, right? So
Mhm.
basically, it's a list. It's a process of how you do anything. So let's say you have a system where people come and book calls with you. You need to have a document. Usually, it's a Word document that says, okay, so the first step is I'm going to get the lead, then this person is going to book the call, then there is this email, then there's that email, then if they don't show up, this happens, if this shows up, they happen, because later on, let's say you have an assistant, right? Let's put it very, very simple, like a very, like in a small, very, very tiny business, you have an assistant and your assistant is like, you know what, found another job, thank you so much, right? But you spend hours, maybe months training this person to
Mhm.
know how to understand your business and how to do things. And
Yes.
sometimes, yes, they will be able to do a handover, but if they have, let's say, a 2 week notice or a 1 month notice and you haven't found the next replacement by then, they will not be able to train them. And actually, they will train them the way they think the other person should be trained. So with the shortcuts, with this, with that, like, oh yeah, don't worry about this no-show
Mhm.
clicking on the button. No one ever really rebooks. So, just skip it. But if you already have these documents in place, right? So the space of like growth,
Yes.
then the next person comes and they do that. And I remember
Yes.
when I was working in the corporate space, a lot of people will leave the SOPs to the end, right? They'll be like, well, we'll do the project. Let's get the project out there,
Yeah.
right? And then we'll
Yeah.
build the SOP later on. Like, it's okay. Like, we don't have time to do this.
Or
And
they don't update them.
you don't update them, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. And then I was like, no, no, no. You build the SOP as you build the project. And then you go and you review. You're like, does it work? Does it need amendments? Does it need changes? Ah, yes, I actually could change this here and there. And then next time, I remember when I quit one of my jobs, I had to do basically no handover because I had a whole Excel sheet that had the links to absolutely everything that I needed,
Mhm.
the links to all the SOPs of all the information they needed to know. And they were like, how? I'm like, because I am building it as I go. I'm not waiting for the moment when I resign and then I need to give you a handover. My handover, it's been ready for 2 years.
Yes.
Not everyone
Yes.
thinks that.
Yes, not everybody does. But again, that's an excellent example of what we call maintenance mode. Creating SOPs, succession plans, performance management plans, development plans, all of these things are processes that allow us to have greater stability, handoff, ease, greater allocation, more resourcefulness when it comes to our time. We're able to focus on our priorities. Because here's the thing, if I'm in constant firefighting mode, if I'm having to rewrite SOPs, retrain people, do all of this because there's nothing in place, eventually that firefighting mode will spill over onto the customer experience. If
Mhm.
now I'm so focusing internally on the dysfunction that's existing within the organization, that means I may not be able to deliver on the promises I make to the customers who have just hired us or those people we serve.
Yeah. And I remember also, I think this is something that's very important for like people to understand when they're thinking about like corporate retreats and kind of spending time in that space. Like it's also how you communicate with them, right? Like that they understand
Yeah.
your language. Because I am sure if like I come and I speak in like with some words and lingo that is very like maybe I'm gonna not even gonna go into the space of like people in the spiritual world that you use like words like enlightened and soul sister and da da da, but even just from the space of being like very like fancy words like so we are gonna increase our rates and da 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 and productivity by this and that. It makes it so complicated, and people are like, well, how would you like how what do you think like in this space is like the correct language to approach people within this space for them to understand what you're offering, but also really take
Yeah.
it from a space where there's space for growth?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of things came to mind as you were talking. Number one is what I don't do is I don't help organizations develop their strategic plans.
Hmm.
That's not what I do. What I do is I then say, once you have a plan or you need assistance in articulating that plan or communicating that plan, that's where we come in.
Hmm.
One of the things we do with the retreat is we focus first on what is the strategic plan? What is your collective wins? What are you moving toward, focusing on over the next 2 to 3 years? Let's start the retreat talking about the what, where we need to go. What's our destination? What does future state look like? And then we spend the bulk of that retreat talking about how the three key drivers, first being leadership, the quality of leadership, second, the quality of the communication, the third, the quality of the teamwork that exists throughout this leadership team and through the rest of the organization are the three main drivers on whether or not that strategy you just spent a whole lot of time putting together, whether it's going to come to fruition.
Right.
Typically, if your strategy fails, it's because either A, it was a bad plan, wasn't a good plan. It was too lofty. It was too big. We were going to grow, we were going to triple our business in 5 years, right? Maybe that's achievable. Maybe it's not. But the main reasons why I have found those strategies not to come to fruition or as being successful as we hoped that they would be, achieving our win, is because of poor leadership, poor communication, lack of teamwork. And we
Right.
spend the retreat emphasizing the importance of those things and providing leaders with skills, tools, techniques that we will continue on after the retreat, helping them to be better leaders, be better communicators, and work more aligned as a team.
My gosh, I love this. So, yeah, I have to say, one of the biggest things I've seen as well is communication. How do we communicate, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I have so many stories that come to mind from like poor communication,
Mm-hmm.
like me and with other colleagues, right? And then really going from the space that I was like, this is not working for me. I need to learn how to communicate better. And I also need to know how to respond better because the other person might lose theirs, but I am the one who gets to respond to that. So
Yes.
how can I respond better?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things we talk about, especially when it comes to communication, is that I get the group. Like, we do team building, we do team things, but a lot of the team things are very purposeful and they're very intentional. And a couple of the exercises we do, like one of the exercises we do is we get at, okay, um, when I do give you feedback as my colleague or as my boss, right? I said, look as team members, you've got to engage in healthy conflict.
Mm,
And one of the things that you need to know about one another is how to give each other feedback. One of the communication exercises we do is I have people go around and talk about if you are going to give me critical feedback or constructive feedback, here's the way I prefer to receive it. Great. If you're telling me how you want it, I'll give it to you that way.
yeah.
That's how we enhance communication. That's how we communicate. The other thing I need to know if I'm going to work with you, and this is another exercise we do, is what are your non-negotiables? What are those things that I need to know in order to work with you? That if I violated, what are those expectations you have of me as your colleague? That if I were to violate it, would strain our relationship. I call those non-negotiables.
Yeah. And
And the
those could be
reasonable
don't call me
yeah.
after 6 p.m.
Yes, or don't take 40 minutes to tell me why you can't do something that would have taken you 2 minutes to do. Don't tell me I'm going to get something and then you never deliver on it. Whatever that is, we have to take time talking about it, because what happens is this: we get put on a leadership team, or we get put on a team, and we quickly start talking about what the team needs to accomplish, but we never talk about how the team needs to work better together to accomplish that win. Look
Mm.
at I'm in the Buffalo, New York area. We have our Buffalo Bills, go Bills, and everybody in Buffalo know what that means. And we want this team to win a Super Bowl desperately. You can have the best plays, you can have talented players. And look at, I have worked with some senior leaders who are incredibly talented. But if this team's not coming together to work collectively towards those wins, they may not achieve it. They've got to communicate better. They've got to talk about things that they may be uncomfortable talking about. They've got to be willing to engage in good, healthy conflict, which means they've got to be independent, critical thinkers, but they've got to also be positive, add good energy. And
I
so
love
I
this.
think that those
I
are
want your
important
retreat.
pieces.
I mean, I'm like, yeah, like
Uh,
I think I consider myself a good communicator. I've like
yeah,
done my work. But definitely I'm just like, oh, this is good. Like everyone needs this, right? And I think corporations need it in a way that it's so important nowadays,
yes,
especially after the pandemic, especially after people realizing that we don't need so many like group meetings, that so many of them were just about people showcasing themselves so
yeah,
they could get the promotion. So not much was really accomplished in those, it's like
yeah.
just thinking, does this need to be a meeting or could this be an email?
Yes, those are things that we have to talk about through communication. What is the mode? What's the manner? What are ways? What are the norms we need to create, right? In order for us to be able to, around communication, that work for this team. And, I should just also mention too, if I can really quickly, is I do a lot of corporate retreats, but I also do a lot of not-for-profit organization retreats
Yeah,
as
let's talk
well.
about
And so any team that needs to work collectively together towards common goals, I'm very good at working with. So in fact, I worked with a leader of a not-for-profit organization this morning. We're going to start. We're planning a retreat for early next year, to start the year off next year. And again, they want to focus on how do we, as a not-for-profit entity, we have goals, we have things that we have to achieve as an organization, and we need the same kind of team alignment, Frank. That will be, I think, a good kickoff to the work that we now will need to do in order to achieve our wins as an agency.
So what do you think that the goals of an like the way or the structure of the flow of a nonprofit with a like profit organization should be the same?
Should
Like
be exactly the
like a
same.
nonprofit should be treated like a company. Like
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. I've done retreats for academic institutions, leaders in academic institutions. They don't like me when I use the word business, but we all in the business of some kind. We all have people who we have to provide promises to. For
yeah.
academic institutions, we make promises to the students we serve, the alumni in which we serve. And it's all about, we've got to work collectively together in order to fulfill those promises. It's the same thing with a for-profit organization. We have customers, a not-for-profit organization. We have people we serve, but we all make promises to them. That's our value proposition. The value proposition, the most important piece of it is having the ability to consistently deliver our promises to those people we serve 100% of the time.
Mm.
And if we can't do that, then we open the door for those people to go somewhere else. And we don't want them to do that. So we have to work, we have to lead effectively. We have to be aligned as a team. We have to communicate, in order to be able to deliver our promises to the people we serve 100% of the time. It's the most challenging thing leaders do in organizations.
So I have a question for you. Out of all the companies you work with, and I know you've been in the business for a while, and I can
Yeah.
but I can really see that you have like a loyalty mindset in place. So how do you find like retention for working with people in like profit and nonprofit organizations? Do they tend to stay on with working with you in the future, or like maybe, of course, it would not be
Yeah.
exactly the same because they're not like, let's say they're not turning down so many fires as the year before, right? Because if it's been successful,
Yeah.
then there's less fires. But do they keep like, do you have like a like place where
Oh,
people
yeah.
like the people stay on working with you?
Oh, yeah. Some of my clients I've had since I've started. In fact, most of them I've had since I've started. In fact, every year I refer to the months of August and September as client meets. So I meet with every one of my clients and I say, okay, let's look at what 2025 is going to look like. And we
Mm.
sit down, we map it out this morning, and literally I'm spending, September, October having meetings with all my current clients to talk about work for the coming year. It may be retreats, it may be a leadership foundations program, it may be quarterly check-ins, it may be workshops, it may be a keynote. It may be executive coaching. I do not like to view myself as a vendor.
Mm.
I view myself as a partner. I'm an external partner working to support the developmental needs of my clients and the people within those organizations. Those leaders change, the people change. They're constantly promoting people, elevating people, and so there's always going to be opportunities for me for my clients to provide additional services that they can utilize. There are three strategies in every business. There's a financial one, an operational one, and a people one. And what I do is I always try to understand the people strategy as well as the financial and operational one. I want to know that, but I really want to make sure that their people strategy is well integrated with their operational and financial one. And what I do is I work with my clients to make sure that when it comes to their people strategy, I am a partner that they utilize regularly
Right.
to support
Mm.
those efforts.
I love this. And I have to say in this space, and I have another question that it's like a little bit more
Yeah.
technical question, but I think it's very interesting for anyone who's
Mhm.
listening to this. But I would say here in this space of like really thinking about the people, but like the thing that came to mind is that there was this research that says that I don't know who did the research, but the research said that whenever you hire someone new, it takes them 6 months to really fully be at capacity of the previous employee. Right. So that
Right.
means these employees costing you more because they're not being as productive as employee
Exactly.
before. So if you're a people's person, right, and you're increasing the way people behave inside of the company, and then you have a lower turn rate, then also it has financial benefits.
Yes, yes. Look at you're talking about the learning curve. As people are learning, productivity dips.
Yeah.
And there's a cost that's very expensive, right? And so that's an investment, right? That's growth. And growth mode is we have to make an investment that's going to position us for sustainability, long-term sustainability. And so as productivity dips when people are learning, it can be very expensive. However, we can accelerate that learning by providing good coaching, which means we have to have good supervisors and managers and leaders who are very good at coaching. We could have really good procedures and processes and norms that are written down that are universally used throughout the organization. That will speed up people's learning. And so we could speed up that 6 month period by applying a lot of things that are is stability maintenance mode
So I have actually a
procedures.
crazy idea right now.
Yeah,
It's like I'm thinking like, you're saying yes, like you're like the boss, the manager, the supervisor needs to become a better coach. I think
yeah,
companies should like hire someone to actually provide like a proper coaching program for its senior management to learn how to coach, right? And not just
yeah,
be like, oh, well, I took a few courses here and there, and maybe I remember I really love this course, but
yes,
I took the emotional intelligence course. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
people are like, oh, I took my 2-day emotional intelligence course, and then I'm set to like coach people. And sometimes people will grow very fast inside of their like career journey, and they do not have like the necessary training that goes with it in order to be ready to be in that next layer where now you have not maybe not one person underneath you, but you have two, maybe five, then 10, right? I
Yes.
remember I got a job offer not long ago, and it was 400 people under me, and I was like, no, thank you.
No,
I'm
you
like,
can't
I want
coach that
my
many
business.
people.
I'm happy. Like, the offer was great, right? It was 10,
Yeah.
but I was like, do I really want to manage 400 people? I'm like, no,
Yes.
no. You know what I mean?
Yes. Exactly. We offer standalone programs on coaching skills for leaders.
Hmm.
It is always coaching skills for leaders. The series of programs on coaching skills is a part of, and we put a little bit into our retreats. It is part as a huge component of our Leadership Foundations program, which is our 6-month program. It is a huge component of the Leadership Comprehensive program, which is our 8 or 12-month program. So all of our programs that we offer
Thank you.
teach
Hmm.
leaders on how to be better coaches, because if you're not going to be perceived to be a coach, your employees will just simply perceive you to be a judge, and
I
judges have
love
no
this. Oh
power.
my God. This is such a good phrase.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then you're a judge. And here's what judges just enforce policy. Judges just care about achieving compliance, but it's short term. You don't win. And as long as you're a judge, you're going to be constantly having to be on top of people and remind people of what to do. If you're a good coach, though, you're developing people. See, that's long term. You hold the power. You focus not only on compliance, but getting people to go and say, now I understand why I have to do it this way.
Hmm.
Now I do it because I believe it to be the right thing to do.
Not
Good
because I have.
coaches, yeah, good coaches know how to do that. And if you're a really good coach, that means you're creating a good cycle of leadership. I
Hmm.
tell leaders when I do my opening retreat, I said that I go, you know what, leadership is a cycle. And I ask people in the room, I go, how many of you are a parent? And a good number of hands go in the air. They have children. And I say, I ask you that personal question for a reason. I'm asking you that question because I want you to know that every single thing you do every day, you are teaching your children how to raise your grandchildren. What you are teaching your children today, they are going to take with them to teach their grandchildren. It's
Right.
the same thing with you as leaders in organizations. Every single thing you do every day, you are teaching your employees what it means to be a leader.
Hmm.
So, what do you want them to know? What kind of impact do you want to create? Because every single day you need to be thinking about the impact you are creating and how you are showing up for them as their leaders that they are choosing for you to be every day. I go, nobody's been sanctioned or sentenced by a judge to work for you. Like no judge said, for your crimes, you got to go work for this company, right? Every single day when we go into a workplace, we are choosing those people who are leading within that organization. We are choosing them to be our leaders. But with that comes a responsibility. We have a responsibility as leaders to lead those individuals by helping them to grow as well,
Hmm.
because they're the future leaders of the organization.
This is so good, Frank. I have like one last question before
Sure.
we let this go. So, for example, I run most of the corporate retreats I run are in Mexico, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm based here, and I do believe people in Mexico need a lot of help because there is a whole thing about people working 12 hours a day. Like it's a thing, and one starts and then the next one, and then people are like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna come to the office at 5 because then I skip the traffic," and I'm like, no. So like, and then they're like, oh well, I'm gonna skip the
Yeah.
traffic in the evening, so I'll leave at 9 p.m. And you're
Oh,
like, yeah, it's crazy. And there's
wow.
all this research behind it. Once one person starts staying later because they want to showcase that they're better at work, then the person next to them is gonna start staying also 1 hour, and then 1 hour, and then like most of the team will start staying over and working extra hours, not being more productive, actually being a lot less productive. And then that person who started going to be like, no, 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 now everyone is staying until 7. So I need to stay until 8 so I can show that I am very, very committed to my job. Right. And then again, it's a whole cycle. And then people, and everyone is working overtime unless you have a boss that is very much like, hey, no, there are like,
Yes.
there's two reasons why you're working more. Either you're not productive enough, or I'm giving you too much on your plate. Like there's no
Yes.
reason for you to be staying over, right? Of course, there's like
Yes.
times where projects and whatnot, but in the
Yes.
general rule, no, you should be able
Yes.
to do your job in the hours that you're allocated for. Anyway,
Yes.
so we do them here, and they fall under education, right? And there's a norm in Mexico where, because it's education, then it's tax deductible. So does that work for you as well? Because I know in some parts of the US, you can actually do corporate retreats and they're like tax deductible. People can attend retreats and they make them tax deductible because they fall under like kind of like a specific piece in the tax break.
Yeah, I don't think that that's the case here in the U.S. At least I've not been aware of that at all. I know that for every corporate retreat, it is something they have to budget for. It's something that they have to invest in. And so I don't think there is the tax break on that at all. I know that when they hold these retreats, like I said, I've done these retreats all over the US. I was in San Antonio 2 weeks ago. I've been in California. I've been all over the United States doing these retreats for clients wherever they want to sponsor them. You have to view these retreats as an investment. And so I don't think there's any tax breaks, but I do know that you will get the return on the investment
Oh yeah.
if you come out of these retreats with a better sense of how to be more effective as a leader, how we can communicate more effectively, and how we could be more aligned as a team to work towards our common goals.
I love this. Very good. Well, some more extra research for me to figure out if there's something bad.
Yeah,
I'd reach out to like some tax people, because I know some retreats people make them and they're like, oh yes, this retreat is tax deductible. I don't know under like which
yeah.
concept and but yeah, but in Mexico, definitely after the pandemic, there was this like whole norm that was all about like
Oh, that's
companies
great.
had to provide education to their
Hmm.
staff. And because of that, they made it tax deductible. So people like companies could be like,
Yeah,
not the whole thing,
yeah,
big piece of it. So
yeah.
it's be quite interesting. All right. Oh my gosh, Frank, this has
Yeah.
been absolutely amazing. I'm so thrilled.
Well,
I'm so
thank you.
happy that we had this conversation with all of you amazing listeners who stayed on until the end and learned a little bit more about really like the mindset of like entrepreneurs in the space of like going into the corporate place, but really about high impact teams, and really how you need to start from the top. People need to stop being reactive and becoming more proactive, and there needs to be systems in order for that to happen. People need to become better leaders. They need to communicate better. So thank you
And
so
be
much.
more aligned.
And
You're
if
welcome.
someone wants
Thank
to
you.
talk to you, like how do they find
Yeah.
you? How do they reach out to you? You know?
Easy. I've got a website. Again, my name is Frank Ciccia. My website is www.illuminaregroup.com, and Illuminare is spelled ILLUMINARE, and then GROUP.com. If you go to my website, there is a contact page. All you need to do is fill out the contact form, and I check those regularly. We'll respond to you if there's any questions you have. My email address is also on my website. You can just even email me directly as well, but go to the website. All the information is there.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, and we'll put the link below so you can just go and click on it. You don't have to go and type anything from you, but just go check out Frank. Frank, thank you so much for being here and sharing all your amazing knowledge with us.
Well, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate the time today and for asking me to participate in this amazing podcast. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. See you next time. For everyone who's listening to the episode, thank you so much for following. And if you like this episode, make sure you like it, you follow us, leave us a comment, or share it with some friends. Bye. If you want to learn how to host corporate retreats and add them into your business, I invite you to book a call with me. We have a program starting, Mastering the Art of Corporate Retreats, and you could really benefit from them. If you're tired of finding one client here, one client there to go into your retreats, you understand productivity, communication, and you can bring something different to the table for people to come together, this is definitely the program for you. Book a call and let's have a chat and figure out if this is the right step towards your business. Remember that you can really grow a huge business if you're focusing on corporate. Thank you so much for listening to How to Run Profitable Retreats. I am your host, Lainey Cavazos, and I hope to see you here next time. Wow, what a great episode. If you like our podcast, How to Run Profitable Retreats, leave us a review and share it with a friend.